Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I'm your host, MGCovers. This is episode 71. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody had a great weekend, a good week. A lot to discuss in this podcast. We'll give you an overview. Tell you a funny story here about my ex and the hurricane and how living without social media impacts your life. We're going to touch briefly on Major League Baseball. Not been a profitable year for us for Major League Baseball, even though we absolutely crushed the previous 2 years. Been extremely difficult. Give an update on that and why I think the books made a ton of money on Major League Baseball this year. Going to talk about soccer and the classes model and show you something very, very fascinating. And one particular concept you want to pay close attention to in this business is always thinking differently than the general public. That will more times than not give you an edge. And then finally, we're going to talk about this NCAA football model, which is having a ton of success in the back test, which I knew it would. It was profitable the first 3 weeks of last year. So I back tested it. 2003, 2004 seasons looks to be a very profitable model and very exciting for us for having a huge fall in addition to NFL, which we'll wager on as well. And then probably wrap the podcast up. We're going to talk about this stat model coaching program that we're going to launch. It's actually going to come out this week. Excited about that as well. All right. Funny update about the hurricane. What's interesting, a hurricane, I don't even remember the name of it. Was it Hurricane Aaron? Was that the name of it? But anyway, so this was 2 days ago. So I'm just chilling. I think it was in the morning. My ex, who I have a great relationship with, by the way, sends me a text and says, "Hey, do you know there's a major hurricane headed your way?" And it was like a category, I think it was category 3 at the time. This is what's wild. That was the first time I had heard anything about a hurricane. Again, I deactivated all my personal social media like a month ago. So I had no idea, like no idea. And what's wild, when she told me that, I'm like, oh, I need to research this. So I jump online. I'm like looking at it, the tracker, and then some anxiety starts to build like, hey, what am I going to do? Because it was good ways away, but they were projecting it would hit Puerto Rico, which is actually to the east of me. And then shortly later, maybe a couple hours later, she sends me another text. They've upgraded it to a 5. So then I got this in my head, like, wow, it's upgraded to a 5. What am I going to do? So I tried not to overreact. And my granddaddy, let me tell you a story, and I'll finish that one. He was a farmer. He used to watch the news. He would watch the weather. That's all he would watch. And this is when I think the weather came on at like 6:17 at night. So when I would spend time with my granddaddy, he would like literally come and sit in his recliner right at the same time the weather came on. As soon as the weather went off and it was like, 5 minutes given the weather forecast, he would get up and leave. And I would always ask him, I was like, Granddaddy, why do you just watch the weather and leave and watch nothing else? He was like, Buck, he used to call me Buck. He was like, Buck, if it gets bad enough, somebody's going to tell me about it. And that's so true in life, right? And so many things that we worry about and have anxiety about are self-inflicted. Now back to the hurricane story. So it didn't really look like we had a little bit of rain that morning, which is normal here. I mean, we'll have a torrential downpour 10 minutes later, perfect sun. So I decided to go to the golf course. While I wore pants, I normally wear shorts because it was a little bit cooler. It was overcast. And then I decided, I usually walk. So I was like, all right, I'll run a cart today just in case it rains. I could have played 18 holes, I only played 9, no rain, just overcast the whole time. Then the next day, which was that yesterday? Yeah, perfect weather, a little bit overcast, no rain at all. So it's pretty wild, and a good lesson in life that majority of things that you do worry about rarely come to fruition. And so glad that I disconnected from social media. You just live a more balanced, more realistic life. And I think, again, you can have your own personal social media. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying I think there is some benefit to disconnecting from the world and only focusing on things that are important in your life. So that's that rant. All right. So let's talk some sports here, some wagering, and let's dive into Major League Baseball. And I do want to share this, which is pretty fascinating because we talked about this last week at great length about form being the most undervalued situational angle in sports betting. And I still believe that. So what I did was I went back and created a quote form model. There's a coaching video on the site. Clients have access to this whole form video, how to apply it, how to use it, et cetera, et cetera. And with that being said, we'll make a quick plug for the service. If you want to become a client, you get access to this model. We have 7 episodes of the Major League Baseball model. Even though it, quote, wasn't successful, you'll see the process of me rebuilding a new model. Plus, you get access to about 200 coaching videos on the site, access to all our power rankings every single day. Of course, access to all of our college football plays starting in the fall, $49 a month. And then if you get access to all my personal plays, that's $100 a month. And if you want to get a quote associate's degree in sports wagering, you can, instead of paying $100 a month, you pay $499 one time. You get access to everything on the website for a year, which is really, really, really solid value and much better than subscribing to an handicapper that just sends out plays, because there's no educational value or learning that takes place. Link to join in the description of this video. All right. So what I did was I applied this form concept to Major League Baseball, and it actually produces a lot of volume. You can see here the very first day, it went 4 units up, 813. Next day, it even 814, cashed a dog up 1.4 units, and then had a really good day right here. 815 up 2 units, 816. This was a really solid day. 2.84 units. Now, what's interesting about this, when I posted this for clients on 8/17, I said, hey, this model is due for regression. And this is a great point to bring up. And let me show you what it tallied up until that date. So it was 23-13 going into 8/17. And I warned clients, I said, hey, strong possibility this model is going to regress. It's obviously going to regress at some time. At some point, it just can't maintain that high of a win percentage. And look what happens the very next day. Regression is a very important point in sports handicapping. Not a lot of people talk about it. So real application of this would be if you're on a really strong run like this, like a 23-13 run, you might want to lower your wager amount here going into that next day, or you could potentially take a day off. And sure enough, it goes 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It went 2 and 6 that very next day, which was a pretty significant losing day, minus 4.4 units. Yesterday, it split out. It went 1 and 1. And since we've tracked this in a week, this has actually done really well. This, I think if you're going to succeed in Major League Baseball, my personal opinion, even though we weren't successful this year, is you're going to have to play volume, a ton of variance. So playing more volume will account for that variance, whereas as opposed to cherry picking 1 or 2 plays a day. It split out yesterday and has a total for 1 week, very positive, 26-20, up plus 5.7 units. And I'll give you the plays via the form model today: Milwaukee, Toronto, Washington, Baltimore, Milwaukee, all dogs. And then Kansas City, Athletics, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plays today. So it is producing a lot of volume. I'll track this until the end of the month. I think it will be very difficult to profit in Major League Baseball in September, even if somebody was sharp. That was a big mistake I made last year, continuing to wager. Had we cut it off in August, we'd have made about 52 units of profit, kept wagering, ended up with like 35. So that's true for any season, any sport. It's probably best not to wager late in that season. And the reason is very difficult to assess motivation. And to give you an example, a team that's not going to make the playoffs in Major League Baseball, they might try some new players out. They might bring some pitchers up or some young players up from minor leagues to see how they perform. Then you'll have teams that have already or know they're going to make the playoffs, be in the playoffs. So their motivation goes down because they're like, hey, why are we trying to kill it every day when we know we're going to be in the playoffs? And you'll have other teams that are going to be playing lights out, trying to win to make the playoffs. And then this other form of motivation I mentioned this before with NHL with Detroit. I think this was probably 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. They weren't going to make NHL. They weren't going to make the playoffs. Terrible team. They had a terrible record, but they were just crushing everybody late in the season. And we were playing them like every night, plus 200, plus 250, plus 225. So they knew they were going to make the playoffs, but they were just out having fun playing professional hockey and ended up being a huge dog. So you have a lot of variables at the end of the season. It makes it very difficult to handicap, and in essence will skew your model to some degree. Same reason why you don't want to wager very, very early in the season. You don't have sufficient data, very unpredictable market. But after you have sufficient data, up until the quote end of the season, near the end of the season, which is generally a month before the actual real sports season is over, that is your prime pickings for making profit in any sport. All right. So anyway, see what happens and show you one other tracker. This was the one we were doing with the F5 line. We were playing just dogs, and whichever team had the lower F5 line, this is what you're seeing here, 2.6, 3, 3.2. So if a team had an F5 line of 3.2, we would wager for that team. And it's actually been profitable, 15 and 11. Look down there at the bottom, 8.17 units. Very, very low value. We're just playing dogs only, but since August 1st, minus 1.49 units. So could factor a little bit of variance in there as well. I'll continue to track this one as well, but I'm actually done pretty much handicapping baseball. We'd only have realistically, a couple weeks left. Let me pull up the calendar. Yeah. So we got a week and a half and it will be September, and obviously focused on college football now. But one good thing I've done is I've kept all the stats for each day. So I built up a database. So when that season starts, or when I have some free time, maybe before Major League Baseball starts, I can go back and assess and maybe come up with a profitable model for next year. But a good lesson in that, if you have a model that's profitable one year, it doesn't guarantee profit the next year. It could be profitable for 2 years. It could be profitable for 3 years. It might only be profitable for 1 year. And that's why I think it's so important to learn modeling, because even though we weren't able to pull it off this year, you can adjust. And even last year, the model was profitable. It was slightly different from the model from 2 years ago. So we had to make some changes and we're able to make it profitable, extremely profitable last year. Of course, not able to do it this year. All right, so let's move on to soccer now. And this is super, super fascinating. Those of you that follow me regularly know I've been experimenting with ChatGPT. It's sort of a love-hate relationship. I think ChatGPT and other AI services, there's a few other ones I'm gonna try as well. But I'm using, my subscription with ChatGPT ends on August 23rd. So I'm trying to get as much out of it as I possibly can before I move on to another one, and may end up keeping ChatGPT because I've had success with it with this classes model for soccer. And ChatGPT is an excellent research tool if it has the data. So sometimes when you prompt it to search for things, it can be a challenge. And my only recommendation is I think it's a valuable tool. And if you're going to originate, if you want to learn modeling, I think you're going to have to use ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, one of these services, just because it makes your job so much easier. There'll be times when it does make mistakes and it's very frustrating, but overall, I think it's $20 a month, depending on the service. It's definitely worth it. So what I did was, and I want to talk about, this is a very, very important point to make in handicapping. And I'll preface this first. If you think like everyone else and your modeling is similar to the overall marketplace, it will be very difficult for you to find value. For example, if the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't even know who they play opening game of the season, but let's say they're playing a terrible team in the NFL and they're -8, right? Or the -9. And then you create your model and you say, oh, wow, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs minus 11. There's 3 points of value. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Meaning Kansas City should win. Will they cover? I don't know, but it's pretty obvious to sort that out or to come up with that line. Where you want to think as a handicapper, you want to find ways where you sort of go against the grain, so to speak. And let's stay on football and give you another example before we dive into this soccer, and I'll explain what I mean with this classes model. A team in NFL that starts the season 0-3. They've lost their first 3 games. They're playing game 4. What will the public narrative be about that team? The public narrative for a team that goes 0-3 in NFL playing the week 4, it will be, wow, this team's on the verge of blowing their season. If they lose this, it'll be very difficult for them to make the playoffs. The market will overreact, especially if they're a mid-level team, mid-level to, quote, good team. The market will overreact, and they will be extremely undervalued. Meaning, if the line should be, maybe even, they might be getting, +6, +6.5 points, depending on who they're playing. So what you have to do, that would be actually a very good contrarian play, depending on how you model and how you handicap and what your model says relative to that game. But that's a prime example of finding something that the market will overvalue, but considering they're 0-3, possibility of them going 0-16 is rare. So you might actually get a ton of value actually playing for that 0-3 team to get their first win in week 4. And I'm going to segue into the classes model and make this point here. So classes model, very simple. The hardest part about classes model is classifying each team, an A team, B team, C team, and D team. So the example I just used for Kansas City would be a, quote, A team. And then I'm trying to think of a really bad team in NFL. A bad team would be a D team. So we do the same with soccer. Now, here's what's interesting. Conventional wisdom in a classes model would tell you, all right, if a B team is playing a C team, you would play the, quote, B team over the C team because the B team is higher than the C. That's conventional wisdom. However, in this particular example, and what I'm going to show you, we would actually play the C team to beat the B team. Now, what I did was, and I got ChatGPT to help me discover this. So what we found, and we've got a pretty significant database. This is a sample of 35 matches, which is pretty good. So I asked ChatGPT to analyze the classes and to find a profitable, quote, system per se. And what it came up with was, let me show you one that actually worked. All right, so let's look at, this was from EPL. So Sunderland was a C class team, all right? West Ham was a B class team. That's how we classified. Again, that's the hardest part of this is what you're going to use or what process you're going to use, whether it's going to be stats, subjectivity to rank your teams. So we had Sunderland as a C class team and we had West Ham as a B class. Sunderland was home. Sunderland won this match 3-0, but they were plus 240 dogs. And of course, that was a win. So profit on that was 2.4 units. And what ChatGPT discovered is that when a team is only one class difference, but they're at home and they're a dog, it was extremely profitable. So that means if a B team is at home playing against the A team and the A team is a dog, we would play the B team. Same if a D was playing a C, but only if they're at home. And let me show you some other examples of that. All right, here's another example. This team from the Netherlands, which I cannot pronounce, starts with a G. I'm not even going to attempt to do it. They were a C team. Their opponent was a B team. So we have a C team going against a B team, but the C team was at home. Not as big of odds as the Sunderland, but they were still plus 125, and they win 2-1. And if you don't know anything about soccer, we're sort of incorporating statistical properties in this as well. Statistical properties definition is a fact or facts about that sport. Home team wins roughly 45% of the time in soccer. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, depending on the league. But between the home side, the draw side, and the away side, the home team will win more than those other two sides. So just focusing on the lower class team when they're playing a higher class team at home, we seem to get a lot of value. So that's really a very, very, very sharp angle to play there. And of course, we did take some losses. I can't remember exactly what that was profitable. I think it was up about 6 units with that particular system. And I'm not sure how many games it was or how many matches, maybe 8 or 9 matches where we played the lower class, beat the upper class team. Had one yesterday, which was Leeds. They got a late goal over Everton and won that one 1.35. Did have 3 losses there. So overall, and then let me show you the other rule. And what we did find was a lot of times you'll have an A-class team, which that Kansas City example before, everybody knows this is a, quote, good team, so they're going to be overvalued in the marketplace. So we still want to come up with a profitable system. So what we realized with A teams, we only want to play A teams up to minus 399 when they're playing a D team. And so what ChatGPT helped me with doing some back testing, we realized A against B, not as profitable, A against C, but A against a D class team wins at a very high percentage, significant enough to where we can play up to minus 399 juice. And you can see here an example of that will be Tottenham was only minus 182. They were an A team. They played against Burnley. Burnley was a D team, so that qualifies as a play, and they win 3-0. Now, the other angle that I played, so we have 3 systems in here. We have the home team, lower class. If they're a dog, we have A against D, and there was no, we would play it if they were home or away. The final one was if we played if a team is 2 classes apart and the higher class team is a dog, we would obviously play the dog whether they're home or away. And you would think there would not be that many opportunities where the market had mispriced a B team going against a D team, but you will see it a lot, especially when that B team is on the road, meaning the D team is at home and they're playing against a B team. Obviously, it's not an A team. Believe it or not, you get some real favorable dogs here. And we'll look at 2 here. We lost this one. No, let's back up. Telstar, I think they're a newly promoted team in the Netherlands going against Zwolle. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. They were a D team at plus 150. Their opponent, Zwolle, was a B team. They were plus 170, and the B team won convincingly 2-0. Another one here from Portugal. I think AFS is a newly promoted Portugal team. They were a D class at plus 175 going against Casapia, which was a B team. They also won 2-0, and we were able to get them at plus 188. So this is something I'm going to experiment with. I'm generating this every single day. And year to date, or I say year to date, through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and Monday, this has gone 18 wins, 17 losses for a net profit of plus 8.28 units. And this is different from my, quote, normal soccer model. And I don't know if I can pull that up as well, but that's been profitable. Had a losing skid. It's still up 13 units since April. And then Brazil series and MLS is still up. I think it's 7.38 units. So that is profitable, but also looking at this to see if this might give us some more volume. And this does seem to play a lot more volume, but super fascinating. And the lesson to be learned is that you always want to go, you're always looking for value, and you're always looking for ways to outthink the market, because just like in this particular example, if you have a B team, the market's going to go, okay, this B team should beat the C team, but you're actually reversing that and looking at, hey, well, this C team sometimes a C team will beat the B team, right? and this is true of any sport. So again, I've mentioned this several times during the podcast, and those of you that follow me regularly, always think creatively. And if you come up with an idea like, hey, I wonder if this will work, you need to test that and give it sufficient time and create sufficient data to say yay or nay if it will work. And oftentimes that's the way you'll find edges in this business, thinking against the grain. It's the same deal. I've told you, I got a ton of models where we take out offense, just use defensive stats. That was one of the first breakthroughs I had in college basketball. Didn't use offensive stats, solely defense. And that was an extremely, extremely profitable model for me for years. I've made some variations of that for different sports. So always think outside the box, be creative. You come up with a concept, make sure you're testing it. All right, so let's dive into college football. Super excited about the classes model for NCAA football. We ran this for the first 3 weeks last year before we had sufficient data for the statistical model, but this model just absolutely crushed it last year, first 3 weeks. And then, of course, like an idiot, I changed and went to my statistical model. Should have kept with this particular model. And I'm going to show you some back test results. The very first week, this was week 1 back testing 20. Well, let me tell you, week 2023, I back tested. It went 20-7, so 13 units minus the juice. And then back testing it for week 1 of NCAA football season from last year, it went 36-17. Look at this, 17.3 units in 1 day, which is absolutely phenomenal. The only negative to this would be, and this is something I'm going to have to sort out here in the next couple of weeks, because we're playing so much volume. You look at that and go, wow, 36-17, we're up 17 units. Yeah, but realistically, it would be very difficult to wager that. Meaning, if I was wagering full units, you would need to come up with $53,000 to get down. And obviously, you'd make 17 grand for that week, but unrealistic to have that much liable. So for me, realistically, I'd have probably wagered, $100, $200 a play. If you wager $200 a play, you're putting 10 grand down on 1 day. If you wager $100, you're putting, 5,300 at risk. Still would have been profitable. And that would probably be the quote best way to do it. But somebody with a limited bankroll, you could do it. Obviously, you could wager $10 a play, right? And you would only have, $5,300, $530 at risk and end up profiting 170. But what I want to do is potentially look at consolidating this down to where we increase our ROI, but still make a lot more, so that we're able to get quote more money down as opposed to wagering smaller chunks on each play. But you look up there to the right, 29.2. This is the model through the first 6 weeks back testing, 29.2 units. Week 2, I'll show you this. 19-14, 3.6 units. Week 3, 13-8, 4.65 units. And then we have our first losing week here for week 4, 11-15, minus 5 units. Week 5, huge week, 13-4, plus 9.15 units. And then another losing week in week 6, 2-8 minus 6.8 units. You add all that up, that comes to 29 units. So it was literally up, 29.6. Yeah, it was up like 35 units going into week six, which is insane. And I'll continue this back test. Should be able to finish this before the end of the week. And we've got actual games on Saturday, just a small sample. And of course, the following week, huge slate of college football, which brings me to the last topic. And we're going to talk about the stat model program on a build. And I'll give you a brief overview. I am super excited about this. So I'm going to teach how to build models, but I'm going to teach it through Substack. So it would be a paid service. It's going to be very inexpensive. I can go ahead and tell you the price. It's going to be $29 a month. I know once you join, you will get a couple of models right out the gate, a full explanation of how those models are built. And I'll teach this in a group setting. So this will be different than the normal service that we have, but this will be focused strictly on building models. There'll be a ton of content. Substack, if you don't know what that is, it's kind of like a any other social media platform, but I'll probably make about 3 posts a week to there related to modeling. So it's one of those things to where the old way I did coaching was it was personalized, but of course it was more expensive. So I'm going to try this model. I think this will work because, again, every single person listening right now will be able to afford it. $29 a month. It's not going to cause you to file bankruptcy. You're not going to have to ask for permission from your spouse or significant other to do it. And then the amount that you're going to get in return is going to be huge. I've always modeled my business, and I think that's the reason I've been able to sustain it, have been successful this way, keeping it at a low price point. Consumer joins for a very small monthly fee, but they get a ton of value in return, similar to the Netflix model, similar to the Planet Fitness model. So hopefully that will launch this week. And the college football model, you'll actually get access to that, show you how I classify each team, A team, B team, C, D. We've actually added a new class this year called E class. And so when you join, you'll get full access to that. So super excited. Continue to follow me, MGCovers, spelled with a Z on Instagram, and same spelling on YouTube as well. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in the podcast, and we will talk to you the rest of the week. Peace.